Okay, I'd like to announce that a quorum is present. The meeting is duly called, and notice of the meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act. The time is 6:01 p.m. While we no longer are limiting the number of staff and community members as in-person attendees, we respectfully ask that you maintain social distancing and other health protocols while attending this evening's board work session. In addition, we ask that all those in attendance conduct themselves respectfully at all times during this meeting. Any outbursts or disruptive behaviors may result in removal from the board meeting. The following board members are in attendance: Tracy Miller, Allison Lasan, Catherine Sells, Dr. Buddy Bonner, Angie Cox, Christy Hassett, Jenny Prosnick. I've asked board member Mrs. Sells to lead us in prayer.
Our dear Heavenly Father, we humbly come before you tonight and just ask for healing for our nation, healing of physical and other ailments that have afflicted us. I pray especially for those that are in our schools. I pray for encouragement. I pray for wisdom and strength. I pray that our schools are a place of learning where all those who enter are respected and are valued as a creation of you. I pray for each of those that are sitting around this table tonight. I pray for wise discernment. I pray for just a heart that comes through to each of those that are here and that are listening regarding those decisions that we make or that we hear tonight for the students and our staff and our community as a whole. I just pray as each of us leave here tonight that our service is seen as one of great honor and great duty that we hold to this district. And I pray for each of us as we go through these days and still navigating this health crisis of COVID. I pray for those that have ailing ones at home. And I pray just for strength and healing in a quick and speedy manner. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance and Texas Pledge. Am I going to read this? Okay. Vision statement. All students enjoy thriving, productive lives in a future they create. Mission statement. Students, staff, and community design and implement a learning organization that provides engaging, innovative experiences every day. 4 cornerstones, Dr. Rapp.
All right, so our 4 cornerstone statement this evening is I use resources in an effective and efficient way that serves others. We know as we go through the agenda this evening, there's quite a bit when it comes to resource stewardship, so that's the 4 cornerstone statement we selected for this evening.
That's it. Thank you, Dr. Rapp. Persons desiring to address the Board of Trustees must fill out speakers cards. In accordance with the district policy, only speakers cards addressing items on tonight's agenda will be acknowledged. No presentation shall exceed 3 minutes. The board cannot deliberate on any subject that is not included on the agenda. No speakers. All right. First item, Superintendent Report, Mr. Patterson.
Yes, sir, Mr. President and trustees. The first action item we have this evening is a resolution. I'd like to take just a moment to jump back and forth. The next 2 items, A and B, we will be asking you to consider the approval of a resolution regarding delegation of authority during our first, our COVID shortage, and second, our weather closure due to ice. So this resolution allows, if you approve it, will give the superintendent's office the authority to compensate employees who worked on site during, number 1, the January 26th, 27th, and 28th COVID shutdown, and on item B, February 3rd and 4th during the ice storm. And so we're asking approval of this resolution to grant us the authority to compensate these employees. These employees were the ones who would come, different groups of employees that would come to work as skeletal groups or entire groups during the shutdowns to keep our facilities maintained, up and going, and so forth. So, Mr. President, on action item 1A, we are recommending you approve the resolution delegating us the authority to compensate staff during the staff shortage closure of January 26th and 28th, 2022.
Great. Do I have a motion? Ms. Cox, second. Ms. Hassett, any discussion? Okay. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0.
Mr. President,
Yes, ma'am.
did the motion get read?
I'm sorry. Did I cut you off, Ms. Cox?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Miller. I move that the board approve the resolution regarding the delegation of authority during the staff shortage closure January 26th, 27th, and 28th, 2022, as presented by administration.
Do I have a second? Ms. Hassett, any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0.
And Mr. President, item 1B under action is consider the approval of the resolution regarding delegation of authority during inclement weather closure in the dates of February 3rd and 4th, 2022.
Do I have a motion? Ms. Prosnick, would you like to read the motion?
I move that the board approve the resolution regarding the delegation of authority during the inclement weather closure of February 3rd and 4th, 2022, as presented by administration.
Thank you. Ms. Sells, second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? 7-0. Motion passes 7-0. Makeup days.
Yes, sir, Mr. President. With our makeup days, as you know, during the COVID shutdown and the ice storm, we missed several days. There's been questions amongst ourselves, the board and the community, what we might be doing to make up those days. And so at this time, Dr. Rapp is going to go over the recommendations that we have for consideration to make up the days. Dr. Rapp?
Okay, so essentially, as we provided in the item for you, that in order to make up the January 26th day, we would recommend we have 1 day of banked minutes. And so that would allow for making up that day of closure. Of course, we were closed, as we all know, but I'll say again, on January 26th, 27th, and 28th due to the inability to cover all the staff absences that we had before us. So for the 26th, we would use a bank day of minutes. For the 27th, we recommend first using the bad weather day in May. We recommend this because essentially we don't anticipate that we would have attendance issues as badly on the May bad weather day because exams would still be needed to be taken by our secondary students. Whereas if you go with the April day first, you may face some low attendance on that April day because that's a day people are used to having for right now. It also leaves us April in our back pocket should we have any other issues that spring up and we end up needing that. So we recommend using the bad weather day in May for January 27th. For the 28th, 3rd, and 4th, we recommend submitting a missed school days waiver to TEA. For the 3rd and 4th, of course, that would be due to the winter weather. And for the 28th, we would submit our staff absence data to TEA as the reason that we were closed and we were not able to maintain coverage on those days for the school district. That allows us to, again, hold on to that bad weather day in April should we have another reason why we need it, and or we could consider other options available. You might be asking, what might be another option that's available? The other option that's available is adding minutes to the day in order to generate another bank day. That's not what we're proposing. We did get input from the principals already on that idea, though. I will tell you that they were not opposed to adding minutes to the day, as many times kids are already there, but we really view that as an absolute last resort option, and so that's why we're proposing this strategy before you this evening, and I'm happy to take any questions about it.
No, there's no action on this, right?
No action, no. We would ultimately be bringing the missed school days waiver before you on Monday night, the 15th.
Okay, thank you.
I have
Ms.
a question,
Brosnan.
Mr. Miller.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Okay. So I guess a couple little things. So first, how likely do we think it is going to be that TEA will approve this waiver, like have other districts? I know other districts have done this. Do we know, has anyone been approved that we know of? Or?
I don't think we know. I'm looking at Dr. Fitzhugh because we've talked about this at length. The thing that they've said they won't approve is a waiver for specifically COVID-19. And of course, we were closed due to staff absences. COVID was a part of that, but not the main reason for the closure. It was the staff absences. So their waiver guidance is pretty open-ended at that point. So Mr. Patterson and I have talked about, we believe they should approve this, and if they do not, we will appeal.
When will we know? Like, when are we going to put this
Dr.
in?
Fitzhugh, how long do you think it takes them to respond?
Depends on how many waivers they're getting. Sometimes they're super quick. I can get a response in 2 or 3 days.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
We would still know in enough time that we could add some minutes if we needed to the calendar, should we have to bring that back before you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
She did?
Awesome.
Okay.
It was the same question, but actually now a follow-up.
Sure.
If TEA doesn't, we would automatically go to minutes, not the April date?
Oh, great question. Our next strategy would be the April date, yes. And then it just depends on, the April date's probably the best way to go unless we feel like we need to maintain that in our back pocket for a little bit longer. If we can make it through the next couple of weeks in February, hopefully we wouldn't see any more bad weather. And I'm looking at Dr. Bonner, so he's a meteorologist or something, which he's not.
We'll not have any further bad weather.
Yes, we would like to call an end to the bad weather. So we would prefer to use the April day next as opposed to adding the minutes.
I guess my other question to that is, how would we notify parents? Because I don't want to notify parents of the change in May and then come back to them, and everybody hates the calendar changes. It's confusing. So how can we do that with the least amount of calendar changes to our parents and staff?
Yeah, I think if you all are okay with us submitting the waiver, and if we can give it just a couple of weeks to see if TEA, then we can know and make it just one communication. If TEA is dragging it out much longer than that, then we'll need to go ahead and communicate about May.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks.
Okay, you're welcome.
If they don't approve and we do go to minutes, you'll bring that back to us.
Absolutely.
Who will you get input from that? Will it only be campus principals, or would you have time to bring some of our parents into that discussion?
It would be challenging to bring parents in because the window of days that we have left, if we needed to add minutes, is shrinking, so that as your days kind of go down, the number of minutes you might have to add goes up. So we're really, in that instance, relying on those principals for input. It'd be hard to put out a survey and ask about it just with the short time frame. So having that April day in our back pocket still really is our best option.
Okay. Thank you for that explanation, because we have been really cognizant of involving parents and doing surveys and stuff, but your explanation of that it really doesn't, the time frame would not allow for that. I just wanted that to be known up front. So on the back end, we're not fielding questions, why didn't anybody ask us, and that sort of stuff. And so just know that if that decision's made, it's going to be made by your campus principal. So if you have a strong feeling about that, maybe you need to have a discussion if that gets to that point with your campus principal, so he or she can share that information.
Yeah.
So, okay.
It's a good point. Thank you.
Lori, quick math question. We do 15 extra minutes a day because we go 4:35, et cetera. So that's the accrued minutes, right?
Yes.
What's the total number of minutes we would have? You're pulling one day from that, so you're pulling some minutes down. What's the total in?
I'm going to rely on my trusty math friends, Dr. Fitzhugh, and them, because there's maybe a smidge of minutes left over after the day.
105 left? Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for letting me rely on their brains.
Okay, District of Innovation.
Okay. All right, so we are going to call up Sean Sheehan, who's going to provide our District of Innovation update.
Just want to apologize to the board. We were scrambling a little bit today. We sent you information. I hope you had an opportunity to at least view it. Got the agenda and the minutes and notes out to you today. I hope you had, like I say, I hope you had a chance to review it. We haven't had a DOI update in a while, and so Sean is going to bring you up to speed. And of course, we've got the exemptions that we had sent out a note to you over the weekend, I think. So, Sean, thank you.
Let's try that again. Thank you. Good evening, board members. Good evening, Mr. Patterson and district leadership. Happy to provide a DOI, District of Innovation Committee update. So I want to start with the top takeaways in that there are very few changes from the previous DOI plan. There's more of a focus on staffing because it's important to be aware of what our neighboring district DOI exemptions are, what they're leveraging. Several have updated, and then a couple are still also in this process. And then there's large overall support from the DOI committee. In terms of next steps, we will have 2 upcoming virtual meetings. There are 35 folks on the committee, so I offer the same meeting just 2 times to accommodate busy schedules. And ideally, we can come out of these last 2 with a final draft. We'll need to post that online for public comment for 30 days, and then that'll come back to the DOI committee for a public meeting and vote. At that point, it'll go to you all for a vote. If everything is really expedited and moving quickly, that would be March, best case scenario. Reminder about the DOI committee, it's 35 members. We've got our 7 board appointed members, district leadership, principals, classroom teachers, parents. Our 3 teacher organizations are represented, and then 3 community members as well. And we've had 3 meetings so far. In September, everyone received just kind of an overview and the purpose of the DOI renewal and its process. The second one was in person. We sat in here. We kind of hashed out what were we looking at in terms of renewal, what was good, what was bad. And then the third meeting was virtual as well, offered 2 times. And folks were offering their input on this. What you have now is the second draft. And so just a flow chart on timeline-wise. We're on that second yellow box where we need to come up with a final draft of our DOI plan that we will then post for 30 days. And please note the yellow box there on the right-hand side. This absolutely must happen by 5/15, as that's the expiration date for our current DOI plan. So, quick overview. The 5 exemptions in place on this second draft include a uniform start date, campus behavior coordinator, probationary contracts for experienced teachers, certifications for district-identified shortage areas, and then minimum attendance for class credit. There's an asterisk next to that one because that one is brand new to this draft of the plan. So first exemption, the uniform start date. As you all know, by law, we're not supposed to start before the 4th Monday in August. So why should we consider renewing it? Well, it provides us with the flexibility needed to maximize instructional time. It's just a proposed continuation from our existing DOI plan, no change in language, and in large support by the committee. Second one is the campus behavior coordinator. Why should we consider renewing this? Well, it does allow LISD to continue utilizing a collaborative approach to discipline to strengthen student learning and foster positive interactions. And as this is currently used, so it allows LISD campus principals to divide and or delegate campus behavior coordinator duties to assistant principals. So they're not delegating the entirety of that role to one AP. It can be mixed and matched. They just use the best person for the best job. And then this is, again, a proposed continuation from our last or current DOI plan, supported by the committee, no change in language. The third one is the probationary contracts for experienced teachers. This is our folks who join the district under the 5/8 rule. No change to the language, in addition with clarifying language. So we're considering renewal, where I would ask for considering renewal is that 1 year may not be sufficient to evaluate the teacher's effectiveness in the classroom, since teacher contract timelines demand that employment decisions must be made prior to the availability of end-of-year classroom and student data. So one example that one of the administrators gave was in the 2020-21 school year. If someone had just started then, or if they had started in that 18-19 school year when we closed in that March, it was difficult to really assess, well, is this person best fit for this campus and this role? I, for example, was someone who came down from Oklahoma under that 5/8 rule, and so, I was a shoe-in, but other folks, maybe you got to kind of think about it a little bit. And so this would allow us to offer an additional probationary contract when needed. Again, no change in the language. There was a concern from the current educators that, well, it reads like it may be punitive, or is it used punitive, was the question that they asked of some of our administrators who were on this committee. And so the language that we added to just kind of clarify was offering an additional probationary contract will not be the standard across the district and only used when necessary to further support the impacted individual and campus. So that what's highlighted there is now extended clarifying language, but no change to the intent or purpose of that exemption that we currently leverage. So the fourth one is where we spent most of our time and effort, and so it is a renewal and an expansion. So as LISD and surrounding districts continue to navigate staffing challenges, this exemption can offer flexibility to address our unique staffing needs. This allows LISD to issue a school district teaching permit to individuals who do not hold a teaching certificate, but whom the district deems best to teach in a district, and this is what's the new language there, it's underlined for you, a district identified shortage area. And so what some of the concerns were that were expressed was that it feels like it's lowering the standard for teachers, and that current classroom teachers wanted an assurance that proper training and guidance will be provided by administration. I'll remind you, our current DOI plan is only in place for CTE and world languages, and so again, this is an exemption. And I want to highlight for you all that professional learning does already provide differentiated support for alternatively certified first-year teachers, and would expand the support for any teachers hired under this exemption. So an example that Sheila Smith, our Chief Human Resource Officer, would give was that I previously had my special education certification, so you're certified in special education, and then you might be working towards that content area. For me, it was math, secondary math. And so sometimes we have folks who just have the special ed cert, which is required federally as well, but they're working towards that content area. So maybe they're just acting as a co-teacher, and then to be that teacher of record, there's kind of that middle ground where they're like, okay, well, I'm working on it now, and at present, we're not really leveraging it for the other content areas, just for CTE and world languages. So again, this is a proposed continuation from our last DOI plan, but also an expansion, and some clarifying language does include classroom teachers with current state credentials will remain the preference. It was actually language that was requested from our current classroom teachers to say, hey, this is still the standard. It's still current classroom teachers with current, credentials.
Sean, real quickly
yes.
on this one, just want to make a note that one of the things you all looked at was neighboring districts that are using this exemption. A couple of things that we've heard, we've lost some candidates who have been able to be hired by other districts, and we couldn't exactly figure out what was happening, but our principals were getting follow-up from that candidate saying, well, Plano is going to hire me, let's say, or Coppell. And what Ms. Smith, after connecting some dots and doing a little bit of research, they are able to hire some people that we were not under this DOI exemption. So I just wanted to be sure that we share that here. That was part of y'all's research and part of the conversation that you had.
Sure. And so some of the surrounding districts that in their DOI language, either that they've already renewed or are considering a renewal, their language is open. That's not even like no one else includes district identified shortage areas. It's just educator exemptions for certifications. Include Coppell, Denton, Frisco, Lake Dallas, Northwest, and Plano. So those are districts that are leveraging this exemption without specifying a content area. Others do specify content areas
Sean,
as well.
could you read that again?
Yes, sir. So that is Coppell, Denton, Frisco, Lake Dallas, Northwest, Plano. And a reminder, so they do not specify any content areas, such as in our current plan, we say CTE and world languages. For them, it's anything goes. And so most on the committee do support the exemption as is. And then finally, a brand new one that was suggested by some committee members, the minimum attendance for class credit. And so the exemption there is, it would be an exemption to the 90% seat time requirement. So LISD educators can focus on, their logic behind this reasoning is, LISD educators can focus on student mastery of learning rather than seat time, and may be useful for students in settings such as virtual learning, blended learning, or credit recovery. This exemption will be used on an individual student basis and is certainly not intended to serve as the standard across the district. Would allow LISD to award course credit, again, to students who are not physically present 90% of the days a class is offered on an individual basis. Again, this is a new addition to the DOI plan and generally overall supported by the committee. So that concludes, those are the 5 exemptions that are on this second draft. We have 2 meetings ahead of us, and I'm happy to answer questions.
Just wanted to make one thing, and Sean and Dr. Rapp, don't let me go too far off base here, but as we were discussing this earlier on that 5th exemption with minimum attendance, we have in place an attendance review committee process and have had for several years, and which does a lot of these same things that we're talking about here. And so we decided this morning that Sean would go back in the next meeting and clarify that with all the committee members, and that might impact our recommendation on this, because it does appear that the attendance review committee covers most of these bases that we're talking about right here on a case-by-case basis. If students get in a bind somehow and they're showing mastery of the class but have some difficulty coming to school for whatever reason, that the attendance review committee can look at that as well. So that may be a slight change that may be coming in the future. I also wanted to add on the 4th exemption about the teacher certification areas. You know, I think we all probably wish we weren't in that position, but we're competing. Staffing shortages continue to be quite possibly our biggest challenge as we move into the future, and we're all competing against these same people in the staffing shortage area. And I have reached out to some superintendent friends, and this came up at one of our teacher group meetings, that it's just a lot of the problems we envision happening, these districts are just really not dealing with some of those worst case scenarios. These teachers seem to be fitting in for the most part. People are happy with them, and in a shortage, it makes a difference. So just want to, that's one of the overriding reasons why we're kind of supporting this recommendation, is just we don't feel like, administration doesn't feel like we need to close any doors. Doesn't mean we have to hire non-certified. It's just if there's a need and there's a person that we feel like can do the job, it's better than the alternative of combining classes, teachers covering others' conference periods, and so forth.
Thank you, Mr. Patterson. Ms. Prosnick?
Well, I'm going to kind of leave off where Mr. Patterson did. I fully support the first and the second. Those are easy for me. But on this 4th exemption, my question becomes, how do we define hard to fill? Because that to me can be open the barn door, and I don't want to open the barn door. I think there needs to be some kind of qualification, if you will, to what hard to fill is. Because hard to fill could be, I posted and nobody applied, to we can't get any qualified candidates. So that's my thoughts on 4. I appreciate you looking at number 5. Those are some of the questions that I had sent in earlier, because I don't want to duplicate a committee. number one on a campus, and it kind of seemed redundant to me. On the third, could you go back to the third exemption?
I'm sorry, Ms. President.
Sorry,
Can
just,
he answer the first question?
oh, sure.
Oh, was there a question? Oh, I don't
No,
have
it
a...
wasn't a question.
Well,
I
there's
just
a
want,
question about
Yeah.
how do we define
well, I
hard
think that I would like that language in there. That's my
Well,
input.
how do we define that?
Yeah.
We don't, so I don't have a, we don't have a working definition on that.
Unfortunately, Ms. Sheila Smith had to step out tonight, but I am happy to pass that along to her, and I'm sure she'll have a accurate definition for you.
I would just say, I think that's a material thing for any head nod tonight. Like, if we're going to agree to give up our authority on that, we need to know what that is. Like, who determines that? Is it the superintendent? Or is it HR?
Is it a rubric of some kind, like if
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I'm looking for.
And I think what helps about this discussion tonight and the opportunity to bring these things forward, which I know Sean had really wanted to do earlier than now, but is to get that input from you all about, without this information or without this piece of detail, because some other people's plans, while they may not have parameters, parameters are, if that's obviously an important factor, then we need to define those. We need to get input about that and then put those back before you. So that's what tonight's helpful for.
Let's go back to 3.
And 3, yep.
Is that okay. So that's the probationary contracts. So I'm also looking for some parameters on this as well, which is who decides that they need to go on an extended probationary contract. Is that just their supervisor? Is that a committee? Is that just HR? Because I don't want it, in my opinion, I don't think it should just be one person that gets to decide that. I think that if we're going to extend a probationary contract, I think the examples you gave were good examples, and I don't think that they would fall beyond that. But those are my inputs for me to, if you will, get on board with those two exemptions. And I'm looking forward to what you all come back with on the 5th.
In regards to, sorry, Sean, in regards to the second probationary for 5/8, that would be a recommendation from the principal that goes through HR. They'll look over the documentation, anything like that. And so it's not a decision the principal can make alone. So
I guess I want some of that kind of in there, that it's not just a principal decision, if you will.
I understand what you're saying.
I have a question.
Ms. Sells?
I had some along both of the lines of hers, but a little bit different. In that probationary, I would like that to be defined in maybe not scenarios, but maybe, and maybe Ms. Smith could give us some of those explanations, is in what instances would that be used? Would a principal have the leeway to do that? And so that's one of my concerns, is that but having that two-step helps, but I think that it needs to be standard across the district, not one principal doing it because of one reason and one principal doing it from another. There needs to be a standard across the district if that's going to happen. And so I think that there needs to be stronger language in order to give direction to those campus administrators for that. You mentioned that this will be posted for public comment, but the public comment has to happen at the public hearing, correct? Just wanted that you're not going to be able to just email in your comment once this is posted. And so wanted to make that. The campus behavior coordinator, how many of those do we have on campuses that, and maybe that's a Dr. Rapp question, that are not APs? Do we know? Do we keep a record of?
I mean, in many instances, all the APs would serve as campus behavior coordinators because they're all dealing with the discipline of the students.
So is this a formal, like I appoint you? Is this a formal appointment on each campus?
Not
or is this just
not a formal appointment. And ultimately, when that law was created, and I can't remember when, 2019, it was not written, it seems, in my humble opinion, with a large school district with large schools in mind. The intent behind it is very good, but already, I mean, any good system is going to divide up the amount of students that any one administrator is having contact for and responding to and intervening with. And so to think that you'd swoop all that to one person when our high schools and our middle schools are as large as they are just does not seem seem practical.
And so my point in that is I would hope that anybody at an assistant principal or principal level was already acting in some ways in that capacity. So this is kind of a, why are we having to do this to the state type thing? You know what I mean? I mean, because I would hope that there isn't an AP or principal in position that doesn't have the skills to really be not the title, but in the description, a campus behavior coordinator in some ways. So that was my other thing. The other question I have, if we're going to open up the certifications, is I want to know who's going to declare that there is a mastery of whatever they're going to be certified to teach. That needs to be maybe a rubric again or something. Do they have, there has to be some way that we can, is 5 years in a field considered mastery to teach in a classroom? Is 15 years? Is 20 years? I mean, it's 2 years or 1 year. I mean, there has to be some way that we can set a standard if you're going to start to do that. And I think that now's the time to set that standard, not down the road when we realize, and hopefully that would never happen, but that there maybe is a teacher in there that isn't really qualified to be in a classroom. And so those are just the thoughts that are coming from me. I think that it's kind of a slippery slope if you don't have everything up front defined, and so that those that are making those decisions are staying in a very well-defined lane. Those are my comments.
The more we, I just, if I can respond, like that was part of the issue with the language, is when we started really clearly defining it, negated the purpose of the flexibility. So it's like if we say, look, 5 years, if you've been a CPA or accountant for a minimum of 5 years, you're good. Guy walks in with 4 years, sorry, man, you're going to have to, he's like, all right, well, I'm going over to Plano or Coppell or Denton or Frisco or Northwest, like for no,
well, and that may be just that there's somebody other than whoever's doing that hiring to review that, and if that's Ms. Smith, then that's fine. And I have heard stories, I've spoken with one lady that was well qualified, but she couldn't get on to teach other than as a substitute, and so it was frustrating for her. And talking to her, I realized she really was well, and she was working retail, and I thought, what a waste, because she wanted to teach. So I still have her name and number. So okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Lasson?
So, I get that. I support this fourth exemption because I'm very worried about the teacher shortage and situation, and I think it may get worse before it gets better. But on that, so this is year 5, right, where we have to re-up this.
Correct.
But can't we make changes to it kind of on a certain, what is the year?
Minimum is annual, but we could meet as many times as we needed to amend or rescind.
Here's my point. Let's hope 3 to 4 years, everybody wants to be teachers again, right? I mean, we can always take this out. I mean, we can always change this, which I think is part of the beauty of it. But because, I get it that we want some, but let's face it, we're looking at several districts right around that, none of them are as good as LISD, but, we are losing people to them. So, that's just a legitimate concern, I think. And I don't know, I guess I just want everyone to think about it in a way that, this is something that we can do for now, and we can change it in a couple of years or next year or whatever if we don't like it. So
I think that's been an important point. We talked about this even, that providing you all more regular updates of how the use of these exemptions is going, and in what circumstances are we having to use them? Obviously, if we walk away from here and need to define parameters around if the fourth exemption makes it through all the process of all the plan, revisit that even in 6 months. Are the parameters working out? So just some more regular ongoing dialogue about how this is going, and to that point, you're not married to any of these things for a 5-year period by any means.
Thank you for the presentation. On the fourth exemption, I agree with the first three. The fourth exemption, what do you mean by most support for the exemption as is? What do you mean by that?
I mean, in terms
like the
of
current one we have now, or this one is written?
this proposed one, yes.
With the underlying new language of the
Correct.
district identified shortage area? Most agree with that?
Yeah.
Okay. I definitely understand the problem that you're trying to face, because it's an issue. I'm struggling with this one, because this is one of the things that I think sets us above charters. I guess I probably would only be comfortable with it if we also added a time frame where they had to acquire their teaching certificate by. You can be hired, but then you need to have your teaching certificate by a year, or you need to be in the process of getting something along the lines of they need to acquire their teaching certificate within a certain time frame. Do we have anything like that currently for the CTE and language?
I'm not aware,
No.
but
No. But we could, because the areas of shortage right now are also a lot of special ed, and some of the other areas that I'm not highly comfortable with, the non-teaching certification teachers teaching certain kids that are even more challenging needs to identify. So I'm struggling a little bit with that one. And the fifth exemption, I'm glad you're looking into the attendance, because to me, and I know a lot of the DIY is really just trying to avoid paperwork for some of the regulations that the state requires, but I think a lot of the students need to make sure, we need to make sure that they're getting what they need, and if the attendance groups are already doing this exact thing, I'm not sure why we need the exemption. So I would be really curious as to what you find out about the attendance groups, but the other ones I think are fine. Thank you.
thank you.
Ms. Cox?
Thank you. Just a few questions, actually. So regarding the second exemption on behavioral specialist, would this be based around restorative practices, or is it totally separate?
Based on what? Sorry. Which
Are restorative practices that we do?
restorative practices? I'm not aware how the
It's totally separate.
No, yeah,
Campus
this is
behavior.
completely separate from that.
Just wanted a clarification on that. So my question is kind of centered around some of the questions that have been asked. We're hearing about some language changes they want. Is the DOI have set languages that they have, or are you able to add these clarifications that they're wanting in there?
we're flexible on the language that we want.
Okay, so we can add what we want. So I guess before it gets posted, we would need to, I guess, make all these changes to get
Right.
that posted. Then this is more of a question, I guess, for you, Mr. Miller, as we might have some board members who might not agree on all this. Will we be voting on this as a whole on all the exceptions, or could we break this up so that the DOI does not fail as a whole, that we make sure each exceptions get in there?
It's all in, all out. I mean, they have to make a recommendation, and we approve one package or no package.
Okay,
I
so
don't believe we can do option A, option B with a phase-in. I think it's all in or all out, right?
We get clarification, Ms. Bay? Not right now, but later.
Because I think if it was phased, if we could do that, we would have done that in 2017.
right.
Once you get the public, once you get the input on the plan and your committee has to vote on the plan, it's not them voting on piecemeal parts of the plan, which is why it's really, you're looking at the whole entire plan, which is why the feedback here is so important, because we really don't want to put anything in the plan that you all at the end of the day just don't see that
Well,
coming
then it would be
forward.
great to get board feedback then, I guess, on what exemptions they may not be happy with. Just my 2 cents.
Yeah.
But if law is silent, then we might have options. No?
I'm sorry, one more time.
If law is silent, we might have options. You don't know, you'll look.
I will look.
What's the question?
I was trying to get her to make an opinion when she can't look at it yet, so it was
I will
silly
email the
of me.
board my answer.
She doesn't have the information in front of her.
Dr. Bonner.
There's currently in the policy, I'm making a lot of comments, I don't know if I've got a question. There's currently in the policy a provision for a TCAP certification, TCAP opportunity to be employed for a year. That's been on the books for some time. I view this as sort of that on steroids to accommodate the times we're going to be in, right? And so I wanted to share that because if anybody's not aware, and if you are, I apologize for the time, but you know, this is not terribly new what we're proposing here, but it is expanded, yeah. And so I appreciate the comments about maintaining flexibility because I wouldn't want to get in a situation where we build a bureaucracy around this where it renders it obsolete and useless. So I think we need to be very careful there. And I trust that Mr. Sheehan will figure out a way to negotiate around all the comments he's heard and bring something back to us that maintains that flexibility but puts in some of the safeguards. And I guess the other thing I would just want to make sure we are cognizant of is this is a unique circumstance for a unique time we find ourselves in. And so I just really think we need to make sure that we aren't hamstringing campus principals who we trust to make these kind of decisions every year on personnel matters. I want to make sure that we recognize that we've got one of the best professional development teams in the entire state right back here behind us that'll train these folks. So I'm really hopeful that we can consider all that as we bring it back here in a few weeks. Thank you.
Okay. I appreciate the administration's support for these items. I don't disagree that some of these things provide us flexibility. And in fact, are worth consideration. My concern is how we came to that conclusion. Like when you say people voted on, can you give us the votes from, like, can you send us an email with who voted, how they voted, what the comments were?
It wasn't like a formal vote, like all in favor, all. And then because of the attendance, I don't know that would be representative of the entire committee to say that, well, you know, I had 4 people for it and 1 against. Well, there's 35 folks and there were only, say, a dozen.
But in the attendance we got, there was never 35 people that attended.
Right.
And in fact, it went downhill pretty dramatically to where we broke it up in the last meeting to 2 different. And so the group doesn't benefit from the collaboration of the other group, right? So as you're facilitating this, you're polling them and asking them for input, but they're not getting the benefit of the discussion. And I'm going to begin with the end in mind. I would ask that you guys consider inserting another meeting. We'll put this on the April agenda and basically reset on some of those things and how they came to the conclusion of supported by the committee, right? This is a statutory requirement that we vote on this one way or the other, just like some of our other committees. And so how people voted, I'm not so concerned about the persons, but it's not consistent with what I'm hearing from the committee, right? That I haven't found anybody that actually agrees on number 4. And so I'd like to just understand that more to get comfortable with it. Now, with that said, do we have, like number 2, tell us about number 2. Dr. Rapp or the chiefs, or tell us about how this is working in campuses. Where have we had to expand it? I can see this in middle school, elementary. We did approve this, so it's just a renew. But tell us how that's working and where it's benefited us.
I mean, ultimately, if you didn't have this exemption, you would have only one person on campus that could be designated as the campus behavior coordinator. That would put an immense amount of responsibilities on that one person to interact with kids regarding discipline and all the things that go on there when it comes to dealing with behavior issues on campus. And it's just not, that's not what's best for kids, because what's best for kids is that their APs that they're working with and who know them and who are seeing their attendance and discipline issues are able to work with them. So without this exemption, we would have had to really problem solve in a much different way. How was one person on our campuses going to deal with the legal responsibilities of what was put into place in 2019?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
So I get that.
Okay, good.
But when assessing this information to present to the board, for the board to vote and stand behind DOI, what were the conversations from campus leaders about the benefit to them? So we did this. We didn't used to have this beyond one. We allowed it to go to two.
The law never intervened in terms of you had to have a campus behavior coordinator. So prior to 2019, we already were set up with all the principals and APs dealing with discipline and attendance issues according to their alphabet or however they divided up, right? So what happened in 2019 was all that power to do that got taken away from us. We didn't have local control on the fact that we were utilizing multiple people in order to deal with discipline for kids. So there was, it's actually, I'm trying to figure out how to say this, but there's not a way to say this makes a difference because at the end of the day, we never had to go, let me recapture that. It makes a difference in that it allows us to do what we were doing before that we've always done because we didn't implement the law as it was with designating it as one person. Did I say that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So how did that benefit us then? Like, not at a theoretical level, but as we gathered information to present to the board, the committee, and then the board, how did these things manifest themselves over the last 4.5 years? And can you give us examples of where a campus, in fact, benefited from these decisions?
Yes, I would say, and maybe your question's a little bit bigger, so I'm not just going to stay focused on the campus behavior coordinator because it kind of gets the question about the 5 of 8s exemption, right? So are there instances where we use the 5 of 8s, and if so, what are those? Or with CTE, where we use those, did that work out okay? I think what you're saying is some of that input on the exemptions we're continuing, just knowing that the impact of those to the campuses would be helpful pieces of information.
Yes, and in fact, my second question on that topic is number 4. How many people did we hire where we waived the certification requirement? What number of those people are now in Chapter 21 contracts? Because remember, y'all, these people become Chapter 21 employees, which it may create flexibility for the campuses to hire people. It creates inflexibility for us if we need to take action on them. So that's just a balance we have to look at. And so if we hired across the district 10 people, it might be that that's worth the exemption. I don't know, right? So some of those specifics would be helpful. And take those to the committee and let the committee process that and bring it back.
We can follow up with you on that. That's not a problem.
One of the things that we used to do on committees where board appointees was on them is that we used to have the 3 stakeholders present to the board at the time of decision. Staff, community members, and board appointees. And in this case, because you have one or more people that are staff members on board appointees, you'd want to pick somebody that's not an employee, right? So it'd be more of a community member. I think that would be helpful for us to hear them express the will of the committee and the benefits of this to our community. And I would say our community being defined in that case as our staff and our students from an instructional perspective. That makes sense?
Yep.
I agree, again, with respect to flexibility, I think we do need that. I agree with Mr. Patterson. I'm not sure that I'm at a point to give that up, that definition up completely. I think if you're in HR, you want as much flexibility as possible. It's easier to staff that way. I would like some use cases of how that waiver, beyond a CTE class, for example. I can see you go hire an engineer, whatever. But someone in world language, tell us how that worked. What campus was it at? Did we see any instructional benefits from that teacher's implementation of our curriculum versus other teachers? In other words, did that professional experience benefit them in the delivery of their instruction? I'd want to hear more about the committee collaboration. how they discussed amongst themselves and came to those conclusions. Like, there's got to be some empirical data that are, things that show that they, out of 35, we on average had 25 at the meetings, and this is how they, hand vote, this is how they voted. I think that would be helpful. It would be difficult for me to support it without that kind of evidence that they collaborated.
Sure.
And then my last comment is back to the Chapter 21. That's where I have some concerns about expanding number 4. Number 2, I don't have any concerns about, what's the one that we're adding, the minutes? The fifth one.
Sentence, yep.
Yeah. I mean, I struggle with this one because, we probably all have stories of kids who, played soccer, done other things, and, they have to get seat time. And then what we hear is that they use that seat time for watching Netflix, right? So it's really getting them into the campus, and they're not really using it for instructional time. They're just sitting there doing something else. I think that it makes sense for teachers to be able to do this. I'm not sure it makes sense to students. So I'm interested in what percolated up, what the concerns were, or the affirmations. How did the group collaborate on that? What did they glean from that collaboration? And why would they? It says supported by the committee. So in one, you have supported by most of the committee, I think, number 4.
Yep.
Most supported the exemption as is. The next one is a little more binary. The next one says supported by the committee.
Right.
Do those mean the same thing?
0 pushback is what I would say. So I have, again, in terms of we never did especially because of attendance, I had hands up for this, because then out of a dozen people, it's really not a good sample. On this last round, on this second draft, I asked for direct email so that I could have a paper trail of who said. So I've got 13 that emailed me directly to say, I am in favor of this plan as is. No pushback. And then why the fourth one reads a little bit different is because I will tell you I've had 2 that just the hard number of 2 folks who reached out to me individually or during the calls to say, hey, look, this is the thing where I have more questions or I'd like to see different language. And there's just a lot of, I don't know if just folks don't know or their silence is agreement. That's an assumption for sure. When I'm saying, okay, so who's opposed? I want to hear good, bad, and then it's just crickets. So it's hard to gauge sometimes.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. So if we have a 35-member committee and if we're ever at 12, then we collectively have failed in who we put on those committees. So if you're an employee of LISD and you're going to be on DOI, where the board has to make a decision this material, this is not really about our flexibility. This is the legislature through the commissioner saying, hey, you want to be more like charters? Here's your way to do it. With what benefit, right? Because the difference is, in particular with this item, they don't have to make these employees Chapter 21 employees. So it's not really fair to compare charters in this. And this is what the whole objective was with DOI. So if we have committee meetings with 12 people, then the board needs to go back and question their appointees as to the commitment. The administration needs to go question their appointees with the commitment. And the community members that are solicited, we just need to find out, are you in or are you out? And if they can't make the meetings because they're concerned about certain things or, we're not social distancing, whatever, we need to find that out. But it's just not clear how the consensus was accumulated. So that would be helpful for me to understand before we bring it back to the board for a decision. Thank you, Mr. Patterson.
I just want to close saying thank you to Sean and thank you to Deanne for stepping in there for Ms. Smith, who couldn't be there. It has been a tough time over the fall, as you know, with people in and out too, to try to have some committee involvement. But we hear your questions and we understand the need for some additional follow-up. And Mr. Patterson and I will work with him on that and get some of that information to you for sure.
Thank you,
Thank
Sean.
you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you, Deanne. Finance report, Mr. Youngs.
Mr. Randy Fight will make this first presentation.
Okay. Good evening, President Miller, Mr. Patterson, and the board. So I actually have two items tonight. The first is a discussion item for a change order to the DeLay Middle School Fine Arts Addition and Renovation Project. I've asked Trey Laird with Stantec Architects to be up here with me to help answer any questions that you may have. So DeLay Middle School, DeLay was built in 1977. Hippelschauser and Associates was the original architect from 1977. In 2010, it went through a major renovation, and Stantec, who was SHW Group at the time, was the architect on that project. Really, the primary scope of the 2010 renovation was, as we all know, a major renovation on the interior to create what is now DeLay Middle School. There was also some moisture mitigation on the exterior walls and new brick all the way around, but there was no modifications to the existing structure of the building at that time. During our current construction of really Huffines and DeLay Middle School Fine Arts renovations both, there was a conflict over on Huffines that kind of caused the architect to start doing a review of the shop drawings and submittals for where the addition tied into the building. Really prompted a review of the existing structure to make sure there was not going to be any conflict with the existing lateral bracing system. Really, as the architect and structural engineer started to look further, they determined that really additional lateral bracing is required. So we do have a few of the original drawings from 1977. It's not a complete set, but what we do have does not show any substantial lateral bracing system. So then we took that a step further. We got with Jackson Construction, and we really wanted to verify. It's hard to believe a building from 1977 wouldn't have lateral bracing. So we asked them to do some surveys on site, and what that was composed of was they went into the exterior walls, they made a small penetration and really dropped a camera down in there to where you could see the existing structural system, and no evidence was found during that survey. So what is lateral bracing? So lateral bracing is often referred to as wind bracing or X bracing. It can take various different forms depending on how the engineer designs the system. It really provides racking resistance to the structure of a building from wind and earthquake and other lateral forces. Typical lateral bracing is attached to the columns and the steel members and the walls, which means to put it in and after the fact, we have to go in and open up those walls. So the cost that you're going to see on the next slide is not only for the steel materials and labor to put the X bracing in, but also to replace any of the finishes that were disturbed during that process. So Stantec provided drawings for Jackson Construction to price up. The pricing has come back at $677,960 to perform this work. We do have, I did put in here that Forest Vista Elementary 20-year refresh we brought to the board in December. We had a savings of over $846,000 on that project, and so our recommendation next week will be to utilize those funds to help pay for this change order. So I wanted to include a picture of kind of what, typical when we call X bracing or lateral bracing, what it looks like. So if you drive by a building and you can actually see the entire skeleton of the building, you might notice these X's in there, and that's exactly what that is the lateral bracing. And then this is a little bit hard to see, but this is the first floor. This is the red lines on this drawing here are what the structural engineers identified where it needs some additional bracing. That's the first floor, and this is the second floor. And I should note that with the new project, the new addition that we built, the renovation, bracing was installed on the new work, so none of that new work has to be disturbed. That's in place. It's sound. So with that, I will, and Trey will help me to answer any questions that you may have on this item.
Thanks, Randy. Ms. Sells.
Can you remind me, when will this work be done if this is approved?
So our goal will be to do all this work this summer. That's why we're bringing it now so that we can procure the materials. A lot of the steel materials are really off the shelf. It's the finishes, some things that we have to order, but to get that done this summer.
How will that impact the classrooms? How many will teachers have to do additional, I'm just looking and seeing how
Sure.
many will be impacted.
So it's not as extensive as like if we're going in to do a full renovation of that room. Really, it's just one wall that we're focusing on. A lot of these are classrooms, as you'll notice, some storage rooms, things like that. But generally, you'll go into that one wall. You'll cut out enough of that wall to expose the structure that you can then weld in the X bracing and then put everything back. So they won't have to completely move out of the room. We'll definitely work with them, move out what's needed, cover any items that we can. We always recommend with all of our renovations that personal belongings are taken home during the summer, just to be safe.
When was the lateral bracing, when did that become a construction standard?
Lateral bracing has been a part of building design and in the building code essentially forever. The way it's documented has changed over the years. I'm not an expert on vintage 1970s drawings. It's a little bit before my time, but over the years, the way a structural engineer would indicate their design on the drawing as far as explaining their design characteristics has grown significantly. So it wouldn't be unusual for us to see an older building of the 70s that's not terribly complete in the drawings that we see. I've seen a project that didn't have lateral bracing in the actual design set, but it actually had lateral bracing that was added during the shop phase or shop drawing phase or some subsequent phase to bidding. Honestly, we thought that we had a very good chance of that happening, and that's why we thought it was wise of Mr. Fye to do that third-party review just to make sure. I would say this as well. There was on the first floor some significant remodel that's already occurred for band hall, choir, orchestra, and those support spaces. The lateral bracing in those areas, we made sure that we did them already just in case, because it's so much more costly to do it after the fact. And so I think that was wise to make sure that we're not tearing into those areas that have, fabric on, paint and electrical devices and switches and so forth that are only a few months old. So we tried to be proactive and made sure we got out in front of those. The areas that you see now are areas of the building that have been essentially part of either the fabric of the 1970s buildings or the replaced fabric of the 2010 remodel.
Then I guess just an assurance that the little camera went far enough to realize that what is there is able to be retrofitted.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, trust me. I wanted to find it, so we had several folks out there looking at the image and making sure. And we actually, once all the exterior walls were done, we went ahead and did that main hallway that goes all the way down the school just to make sure it wasn't interior. There's many ways you can design a lateral bracing system. So, I mean, it could be shear walls, it could be different things, but we just were not able to find anything.
One of the things that we thought that the engineer could have done, if you're familiar with the campus, it has these large kind of massive stairwells with semicircular landings, very strategically placed on corners, places that we would expect that there could be bracing. We thought, well, maybe the engineer was creative and was using those as mass, but there's just no connectivity between that mass and the structural frame now that allows for that continuity. So we've really tried to look at everything, and so the camera could look for things like cross bracing. The cross bracing that you saw in the image was probably a series of angles or channels. You can actually do cross bracing with bars that have a center turnbuckle that actually tightens them. All of this stuff you could see within a wall. It's just not there.
Thank you for that explanation, and thank you for being thorough,
Sure.
Randy, you and your team.
Sure.
Don?
Just to follow up to Ms. Sells, will it be done in the summer, completed in the summertime?
Yes, yeah. We've talked to Jackson, and they believe if we get all the materials procured, they can get it done this summer. So.
Okay. And I appreciate not knowing this when I was there at Milliken back in the day. When I was there. And thank you for keeping our kids safe.
Thank you for your presentation, Randy. So will there be, I know you're keeping the time frame in the summer, but what about shortage of supplies? Are we able to order all these supplies on time?
Yeah, again, I mean, Jackson feels like they can get everything that's needed for this. Really some millwork and pieces like that were the longest lead items. All the steel members that they need, like I say, are kind of off the shelf, so it's not things that have to be fabricated and have a long lead item to them. So we feel like, Jackson feels like they can get this done for us.
Where we could, we identified walls that were sheetrock, and so we're not talking about materials that are that difficult to ascertain. And the bracing itself is not a particularly long lead item, but paint and fixing base and all those things, surprisingly, those are the more difficult things in our current economy. Mm-hmm. But again, I think what's wise is we're bringing this to you now, and I think that gives the CM the ability to plan and gather those materials, get those submittals to us, so that when the kids leave, they can really begin the work in earnest.
So my last question is, it looks like most of the walls are interior. It's all the red, correct? So many interior, but there are a few exterior shown on here. So are those areas brick on the outside, and will any of that brick need to be replaced, and is that cost included in there?
So we feel like all this work can be done from the inside.
It will be done from the inside. The good thing about the work in 2010, the moisture remediation work seems to be holding up well, and the building was experiencing problems then. And sadly, the contractor installed studs that weren't continuously spanning. They were screwed together, which is definitely not what we would like to see, and we're a little bit shocked in 2010. So all of that has been replaced. And so I think with this lateral system, plus the work that's already been done, plus a little bit of kind of educational appropriate upgrade with the music now, you should have a campus that should perform well for a few more decades for you.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Fight and Mr. Barrett, I appreciate your oversight on these things. I'm reminded of, I think, Prairie Trail, where the brick was not tied to the superstructure, and this is very similar to that for me. I think, $800,000 to retrofit something is a lot of money, but I think we're negligent if we don't do it. And so I appreciate you bringing it. I appreciate you giving it to us as a report, and I'm hopeful that 30, 40 years from now, when we're all gone as employees, that your successor doesn't have any of these issues.
I agree.
Thank you.
I do appreciate you bringing it to us. This reminds me of DeGan.
Yes.
And that was also a building built in the 70s. So I'm about being proactive instead of reactive as much as possible. Is there a way to look at, do we have other structures in the district that were built around this time to go and look at?
So we certainly took a look at, the Hippelschauser designs from back in the day. Central is one. That renovation is now complete. So we've been in there. We didn't find anything. DeGan, as you mentioned, obviously we had a lot of work to do there. Hedrick was one. It's gone now. Both Hedrick elementary and middle. Timber Creek was one, and that's one, if you recall, we did all the exterior work on Timber Creek already. This previously Milliken Delay, and that's it. That's all the Hippelschauser and Associates buildings at the time. Not saying that they specifically were the, it's that era, right? So most
were they our only builder at the time?
Well, they were the architects at the time. And actually, on those projects I listed, they all pretty much have a different contractor, which is interesting.
Well, those were the hard bid days for public work, and so you got whoever was the low bid, unless they were just really terrible. And so sometimes you were burdened with perhaps not the best builder.
I'm glad we have good builders now.
Well, you have different options for project delivery that are superior now.
So that was kind of my only question, because this really reminded me a lot of DeGan. So I'm glad we don't have any more buildings to have these nice interior surprises from.
Me too.
Thank you. I had the same question around DeGan, just for comparison purposes. But I think, Trey, you said something that's interesting. that back then, maybe the method of documentation or the degree of, I think you were saying maybe they didn't codify it well enough to have somebody come back 30 years later, 40 years later. And is that kind of where we're at?
No doubt. And so what you would get on a set of drawings from the 1970s is probably a set of drawings, that tall. Our set now would be multiple volumes and this tall. These aren't significantly larger buildings. It's just the nature of the code requires us to articulate our design responses relative to the code in ways that are easier for code officials to follow and go through a quality control process on their end. I just don't think that process was as rigorous, 40 or 50 years ago.
And when you talk about delivery method, we have more flexibility in delivery method. So this we use construction manager at risk.
You have the ability to use construction manager at risk and competitive seal proposals. Competitive seal proposals gives you a significant advantage over a pure hard bid. So you can put criteria into your CSP that ranks your respondents, and so immediately you can introduce not only cost, but the value and the quality that contractor is bringing. In the old hard bid days, it was purely number, and someone would have to prove that low bidder was not capable of performing the construction. And that was a pretty serious allegation to make, because often if you could end up in court if you went that route. So you had to have really good evidence to deny, a hard bid. And I believe all this changed in the late 90s with the legislature change, allowing for competitive seal proposals, CM at risk, and CM agent delivery methods.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Randy.
Board, I just want to say real quick before Mr. Fott goes on to his next presentation, I just want to say thank you to Trey and thank you to Randy on this topic. They spent quite a bit of time with myself and Mr. Patterson when Randy brought this forward, and thank you for the research and everything you brought forward tonight.
Okay, so my second item tonight is just a brief construction update. So these are the same slides that you're familiar with that I've been bringing, just kind of give you an overall snapshot of each year. So the year one projects, we only have one that's still open at this time, and it's a little bit of a misnomer to call it a year one project, because as you know, this was the Mill Street Phase 2. This project couldn't begin until several other projects were completed, and so it's slated as year one, but it really was more recent than that. So this project is substantially complete. We are working on closing this project out and hopefully bringing it before the board in the next couple of months for closeout. For year two, we have 4 projects that are still open. We're working on closeouts for those as well. I did want to make a note on number 2, Lizdola renovations. We actually do have one more piece that we're doing there, and that's the marquee sign and some fencing on that property. We've had to go through some extensive, and Trey's familiar with this as well, some tree survey and just this whole separate permitting process with the city of Lewisville. But we're very close. We really feel like we're going to start the construction on that marquee very shortly, and then finally get that project closed out. All the rest, on all these slides, all the rest of the items that are in blue are closed out. So they have been before the board for official closeout. And then, of course, if you remember the bottom one there, we didn't do anything at campus support. We no longer own that building. So for year 3, we have 3 projects that are ongoing, 3 that are substantially complete. All the rest of these are closed out. For year 4, we have 8 projects that are still open. 1 substantially complete that we're planning to bring to the April board meeting for closeout at this time. And then finally, the year 5 projects. So these are our current projects that are mostly in design. I'll go through these. So Bluebonnet Elementary 20-year refresh. We're going to actually, our goal is to bring a GMP to the March board for that. That one actually just bid last week. The second item, Tech East Edition, I've got an asterisk there. I've got a whole slide to talk about the schedule of that here in just a second. We've got a couple of small projects, flooring replacements, pre-K playground replacement, things like that. We're still working on design on those, but those are for this summer. There's 2 items that are in orange that the board has already approved the GMP on, Lakeview and Lamar. We have Marcus High School Fine Arts renovation. Really, there's no addition there. I should have taken that off. But we are in design on that one. And then the last one, the Colony High School, this is the largest project on the list. We are working through design. This is the multi-purpose, press box replacement, and fiber installation. We are still tracking over budget at this point. We just finished schematic design, moving into design development, and our goal is to bring in GMP to the September board, but material prices are certainly still affecting us on that project. All right, so finally on this list is the Tech East Edition. We wanted to bring this and kind of talk a little bit about schedule. I believe this project will be the furthest extended project in the bond. It'll be the last one we finish up. So the idea on this, and this is a preliminary schedule subject to change, but the first item is in 2022, this calendar year, really gathering data and analyzing needs for the CTE programs. So if you remember, Tech West opened up in August of 2020. And so we really feel like that first year we didn't get true data of enrollment programs and everything there. So I know the CTE teams are going back and analyzing data from this current school year. They will be bringing forward some presentations throughout this year to talk to you all about different programs that could potentially be at Tech East Edition. And then as it relates to design and construction, all of the programming we really need to be wrapped up at the end of March of 2023. That will roll into design, bidding, and estimated GMP to the board in March of 2024. We've been talking to the contractor, and we really feel like 14 months is a good duration for construction there. And that brings substantial completion out to the summer of 2025. And so I just wanted to make sure everybody knew that this addition really won't open until August of 2025. So. And then I've got a few pictures, just some of our ongoing projects. I'll go real quick on these. Flower Mound, this is the 20-year refresh at Flower Mound High School. It's been ongoing for a couple of years now. It will finish this summer with our final piece. They are still ongoing today, but here's a shot of the cafeteria with the new finishes. The library with the new light fixtures, new finishes. And then this is just kind of a basic picture of what you would see in the areas that we're working in, new duct work and overhead work. Right now, they're currently working in some of the locker room areas at Flower Mound. At Hebron High School, we've got a lot of activity out there, actually. This is the breaking ground on the Black Box Theater addition, and they're currently drilling the piles for that. And then inside the building on the 20-year refresh, this is the teacher's lounge and then workroom. Both of these spaces were kind of behind the library. Were slated for last summer, but we had to delay those because the ice storm affected the whole administration of that building last year. And then the current area they're working in is the athletics area. So this is the PE weight room, trainer's room, another view of the trainers. And then this is actually an after picture. So these are brand new LED fixtures in the gym. They're really sharp. They have a great look to them. And then this is just a before picture of the fluorescent fixtures that were in there before. So definitely an upgrade on the light fixtures and the quality of the space when you go in there. And this is just one final view, just the typical finishes. This is the hallway behind the gymnasiums. Lewisville High School, a couple of quick slides. We've got a fine arts addition and renovation project there. The addition is the first phase, obviously. You can see slab and walls going up here. And very tight site to work in, but the good news, you can see a lot of materials there. And that's in this environment, that's great news. Actually, I have one more picture just showing some materials on the ground. And then two quick slides on middle school fine arts. Actually, between the time I took these photographs and turned in the PowerPoint to today, if you drive by today, there's actually walls all the way around this building that are almost to the top. So this is obviously a picture of the slab for the new addition. And then here's Creek Valley Middle School, just an image of just drilling piles on that one. So that's all I have for construction update, if y'all have any questions.
Are we the largest buyer of concrete in the North Texas area?
I doubt.
Seems like.
Yeah.
I do have a quick question. The weight room that you showed at Hebron, is that the one that's by the gyms in the, that's not the football weight room, that's
correct.
Okay.
That one in the back hallway that, yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
Wrestling uses it, I think.
I believe so, yeah.
Randy, I just have a quick question.
Sure.
And you can get the answer to me later because I kind of am putting you on the spot, so I
Okay.
apologize. But I know some of the first-year projects, there were some cost savings.
Yes.
I mean, you mentioned one earlier that we're going to be able to use on this campus.
Right.
Do you know how much is left, if there's any in funds? Because it looks like we might be needing to use them on some future projects.
Right, so I can run that for you and get that answer for you. I do know that we if you remember the fine arts projects in year 4, we had to utilize a
Right.
substantial amount of that savings, unfortunately. But our goal is always, as we start to bring more closeouts, is hopefully there's savings involved in those as well. So.
I didn't know if you could send the board, I guess, a figure
Okay.
of what extra cost savings, because
Sure.
I think we're going to look at increased costs. It's not going to go down anytime soon.
Yes, ma'am. Yep.
I just want to say thank you for letting us know about Tech East and that the delay in that. I wasn't aware, and I appreciate that little tidbit.
Thank you, Randy.
All right,
I did create an action probably for Mr. Patterson, Deputy Superintendent Rapp, or Mr. Youngs, which is, I think it'd be good for us, maybe in April at the work session, to get a view of the entire bond allocation, where we're at, what's encumbered, those types of things.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Randy. Okay. Mr. Colbeck.
Before Brian gets started, maybe, I know Mr. Patterson, maybe a word on the, just our goal with the technology presentation this evening, I think you were thinking.
Trustees, Brian, of course, been working on this for a while. We sent you quite a bit of information on the technology plan, and we know how interested you are in the plan. And so if you recall from the documentation we sent out earlier this week, we have, because of the sheer volume of information, Brian felt it was best, and we agreed about breaking up in 2 reports. Phase 1 will be tonight, and the 3 pillars that we talked about. The process tonight, we wanted Brian to have an overview of certainly what they've been doing working on the plan at this point, which is extensive. And so, but we wanted to make sure, rather than just have questions from the board, as I tried to convey in the letter I sent over the weekend, I think, is to have some guidance from the board, because the technology plan is important on many fronts. It takes up years in the funding, the planning, the devices, all of those things are so critical for short and long-term success. We want to have input from the board, and so I hope that you received that message and gave that some thought, that we would like some guidance to make sure that the board's wishes are included in the plan. And so the process would then be for Brian to take that input, integrate it into the plan where appropriate, come back in March or April, do the same thing with the second phase, and then ultimately with Brian's input, administration's input, with Dr. Rapp, board input, and the Technology Advisory Committee's input, that we have a plan that, with multiple sources of input, that could be a benefit to the district as we move forward. So that's one of the little change in format, and we hope it'll be productive, and hope to get some good input from the board in a little bit. Brian?
There we go. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Patterson. Mr. Miller, members of the board, I'll be leading the presentation tonight, but I do have our other directors here as well who've been involved in the planning process, been meeting with our Technology Advisory Council, so depending on where our conversation goes, I might ask a couple people to come up. So as Mr. Patterson was referencing, really, the importance of technology. Obviously, it plays a critical role in the day-to-day instruction. We're using more technology than ever, and when I think of technology, I think about it from the instructional side, and then also, we are a business, so we use a lot of technology to run business as well, and I think Over the past couple of years, we've also learned a lot about the importance of technology and the role of business continuity. And, certainly with our students where they are, our students today are going to be tomorrow's citizens, and we know that technology is going to play a big role in that. So what we're going to do, the agenda for this evening is just to go over the approach that we've been using for creating the technology plan and guiding our discussions with the Technology Advisory Council. I'll show you a timeline on our meeting timeline and what our focus of work has been. Also share the framework we're using to guide our conversations. And then we put together our kind of key takeaways that we've gotten from the TAC for input from that group. And then we're going to open it up for discussion and get some feedback from the board, and then ultimately I'll provide next steps. So this is a busy slide, but I'll kind of break it down for you. This is kind of the planning process. So initially, technology and digital learning, we met. We obviously looked at our last technology plan as a reference point to see what was in there, what items we need to carry over. We obviously, look at our Splunk data around technology usage, opt-in rates, survey data, and then I'll reference the TEA's long-range technology plan. We use that as a reference point as well. Certainly, since we developed the last plan, there's been a lot of legislative changes. Some, very recent around virtual, around new technology standards. Obviously, cybersecurity is a focus. We've tried to reflect on things we've learned over the last couple of years around responding to the pandemic, and we developed a set of anticipated needs. What we did then is we shared those anticipated needs with the TAC. We shared a lot of the Splunk data around the different cohort groups that we track within that system. We did use the the TEA long-range technology plan as a guiding document, and we started to identify needs going forward. What do we feel like needs to be addressed in the next tech plan? Ultimately, through a process of getting feedback from the group, some trends started forming, and we started working on goals, objectives, and action steps. And that really puts us to tonight. So we're with the board, and as Mr. Patterson said, we really want to get some feedback from the board. Want to share the takeaways that we've developed from TAC feedback, but ultimately we want to take your feedback, listen, discuss it with TAC, and incorporate it back into the plan. So from now through April, as Mr. Patterson said, my plan is to bring back another section of this presentation in March, but ultimately we'll continue to meet with the Technology Advisory Council to draft the plan. As early as May, we would bring a draft plan to the board to review, and ultimately we'd hope by June we could have a plan to present to the board for approval. In addition to that, I just want to point out, it's not in here, but one of the things that we've been looking at, you're familiar with using Plan for Learning as well for the district improvement plan. That's something we're trying to incorporate what we do with this plan so it has some common platform that you're used to seeing as well, which I think would be a good move. So with that, our tax schedule, if you look back, we actually started that back in October of 2019. That seems like a long time ago, but also not that long ago. Just, I'm not going to go over each bullet here, but we started off at that point really talking about what we have implemented since the 2017 bond program. We did a lot of technology work up to that point. We were trying to update the group. We started talking about anticipated needs, and COVID hit. And obviously, we switched gears as a department really to get into business continuity and responding to what the district needed for the pandemic, and we backed off. We were able to get our feet underneath us, and we met again this past summer in June. And we kind of had to start all over again because we did a lot of stuff during the pandemic that put us into a different situation with technology. But we continued to meet since June, as you can see. We also had some subgroups formed around digital access or digital equity. I think there's a different kind of definition of that, pre-COVID versus post-COVID. So we had conversations around that. And then in November, we continued to kind of detail the needs and ultimately start working towards draft goals, objectives, and action steps, which we went over during our January meeting. So this image is the planning framework that you'll see in TEA's long-range technology plan. And I just want to point out, too, there's a lot of different technology planning frameworks out there. There's different ones from Future Ready. There's different ones from low tie, if you remember that. A lot of them have the same kind of items that you're trying to plan around. This particular framework uses 6 different goal areas, and there's 18 focus areas within that. And what we're going to focus on tonight is just the first 3, personalized, flexible, empowered learning. And when I think about that, that's really around using technology to help differentiate with kids. And obviously that includes needing to use data. It includes a lot of the things that we're doing currently, if you think about it. You think about how we've used technology to differentiate for rising stars. You think about some of our tutoring, actually, that's going on right now. Technology plays a big role in that, bringing teachers and students together to help, accelerate that learning. We have our virtual learning academies in place where we try to differentiate and change and provide flexible options for kids. Project-based learning is another great differentiation tool. So we're doing a lot in that area already. When we start talking about equitable access, that's really around the access to devices, as well as access outside of the classroom, as well as access to the instructional materials that we're using. And then in the area of digital citizenship, I think we're in a great spot. I mentioned before we're using more and more digital resources, but I think the more you use digital resources, the more responsibility to be a good digital citizenship there is. So we got to continue to do more work in that area. And I think also you have to find this balance between, responsibility versus protection. And we've had some really good conversations already at the board level around what's that, as Dr. Rogers had said in the past, that Goldilocks rule of what do you open, what do you block. So I think that kind of lives in that space as well. So I'm going to break down the key takeaways. So under personalized, flexible, empowered learning, the 2 top bullets really were feedback we got were around analyzing data and using the different systems that we have where we have data, making sure our staff knows how to look at that data, interpret that data, and take action upon it. Also looking at, from the differentiated, personalized approach, expanding our methods to provide resources to students based upon what their level of understanding is. We also know that we need to try to anticipate and allocate different levels of resources around different initiatives. So that might be instructional, it might be district, that could be in the form of training, it could be in the form of technology support. We believe we need to continue to pursue hybrid and virtual options to meet student needs. Obviously, we're doing a lot of work in that right now, working on some new courses being designed. And then there's a need to stay current. And you think about any type of a technology plan, it's hard to hit because things change very fast, but the ideas of virtual reality, AI, machine learning, those are very likely going to be things that we're going to be dealing with in the near future in a more immersive way. Esports is a theme too that is growing in popularity as well as being a good benefit to kids getting engaged in the school process. And then when you think about the next iteration of the internet, metaverse is something that you see as a common term, but that very likely will also see a place in education going forward. Equitable access, some feedback we got from the council is with our one-to-one program. Overall, they felt like we're doing a really good job with that. However, the feedback is, let's dig into it. Let's do a device evaluation and make sure we're using the best technology and the right technology. Some other feedback is trying to minimize the number of resources and tools that we're using for a couple of reasons. One, the lift, I guess, on the professional learning as well as teacher communication to parents so that they understand what we're using as well, and then continue to provide options to provide out of school access. We think there's opportunities to partner with community organizations like municipalities. There's also very likely going to be certain programs coming through the state and federal level, depending what happens with the infrastructure bill, and then also looking at exploring new technologies in the future. I have Starlink, which is a satellite-based communication, but 5G would fit in there. There's going to be new technologies that we're going to have to stay up on to see how it fits into education. And then in the area of digital citizenship, Like I said before, we're doing a great job with Common Sense Media. We're, Common Sense Media certified, but how do we take it to the next level? How do we pursue those next steps? That's something that we need to account for in this plan. We need to expand and update the current digital citizenship curriculum to include new tools that are out there, and this is obviously a fast-changing space as well. We also, some good feedback we got was how can we actually take some of the digital citizenship curriculum and infuse it into other initiatives like Kindness Week, more into during advisory periods, and then just ultimately integrate it into the content. And then this bottom one was, it says transfer of technology and digital citizenship understanding to student application. What that means is we had some conversation, or we are offering digital citizenship training. It is integrated, but sometimes students' behaviors it's not the reality of what we're trying to teach. So how can we identify that and shore that up? So those are the three areas of focus in the framework currently. So what I'd like to do is just open it up for discussion. What we're looking to do is get some feedback from the board and find out what you'd like to see in the next tech plan in those particular goal areas.
This is great, and I know that you guys have been working hard on this, and I talked to my person that is appointed on this committee and, enjoys, coming and providing feedback and stuff. To be quite honest, I can't think of anything at this moment that I would add. And part of it is because maybe some things like metaverse, I thought that was what Facebook was calling themselves now. I mean, I don't know. But I know that it's out there, and, I like what I see here. And I know that, this is not final, so,
Right.
as we can bring things as we think of them. But, overall, good job. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hassett.
My main concern really is just the equity. And you've addressed, and you are continuing to address the equity in terms of how to make sure the kids get access to internet, which was great. And partnering with others is a great idea. So that's probably my main concern. And then how do we make sure that equity travels down to the parents? How do we get those parents who are having more equity issues, language barriers, how do we make sure that we support them with their students and being able to use those devices effectively and efficiently? Another is the virtual, which y'all are already working on, so I'm anxious to see what y'all might be looking at and how we can serve our students, and so they won't leave to neighboring districts if we have opportunities for them. Other little silly things that I've talked to you, Doctor, I think about before, like seniors have expressed to me, my seniors, his friends, when they were seniors, and then they went off to college, they had to start using Word and Microsoft products. And so can we introduce any of those office-type products in the high school level in the latter years to get them accustomed to working with some of those products rather than just Google all the time? Of course, we're teaching them to learn, not teaching them to use a specific device. So, and then I had one more thought, and I didn't write it down, and I'm old and forgetful. Crud.
We'll come back to you.
Yeah.
All right.
But
Okay.
otherwise, I think I like the plan.
Ms. Cox?
It's okay, I'll let you. So this is a great intensive plan, and I'll think of more questions, kind of as Ms. Lassonde said. But you may have sent it earlier. I wasn't able, because of work, to see. But on the advisory council, did you send a list of who's on there and if they've been in attendance? Because
There was a list during, I think it was December that I came to the board, and that was in board book. It's
Okay.
it's in the section under the work session for December.
Okay.
Attendance, I don't think was in there, but we can get that.
Yeah, and so my follow-up question to that, so if my person is not attending, may I put someone else on there? Because I think that's important.
Yeah, sure. We'll get you the attendance list, and then you can give us some
Okay.
feedback off of that.
Okay. The other thing is, this isn't my wheelhouse. I trust you, and I think the department does a fabulous job. But there are so many, like Splunk. I mean, I'm just going to throw out some words. All this, lingo you talk about, meta universe, and all this. So probably in an evaluation, some of this is costly. I mean, your budget's usually 1-point-something million in our budget. And really what my big concern, I addressed with Dr. Rapp and Gary, is the cost and always having to go out for a bond, and how we can truly know what this cost might be in our budget to start trying to put it in there. I mean, should a bond fail, this would be really sad for this department to be the one to sacrifice. I mean, to me, this is a lot of the foundation of, our what our kids use, the data and stuff. So that would be one. The other is, you didn't mention really you mentioned a little bit, but the Wi-Fi and the bandwidth. I mean, are we good with that as, we grow and continue that? Cybersecurity. Everybody seems to want to attack everybody these days, so just making sure we're sound in our system and our kids, are protected. And then the last one was, I really appreciate you talking about the digital citizenship, because this is really key for me with all the new apps and everything coming out. So I would really like to see this ongoing in all grades, not just as we do it in increment grades, just this digital citizenship be something that once you receive that technology in the district, you're learning digital citizenship all the time, and even in those curriculum classes you mentioned, Kindness Week, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you.
Okay. And on the infrastructure piece, that's one of the goal areas that we'll be getting into a little bit more detail next time as well.
And to go back, I know she just thought of her question, so hang on just tight. So Ms. Hassett did mention about, I do think that is a great point, because, some of us, well, most of us who have kids in college are using different types of technology. So maybe meeting with some of our partner campuses, Dallas Baptist, UNT, TWU, what are their facility and what are they utilizing there that our kids are going to, and maybe how we can implement some of that for our seniors.
Okay.
I did think of my question. Esports. So I'm assuming, I should ask you, are you coordinating with the expansion of Career Tech East for the esports and the AI, any of those kind of things, to make sure that we have the courses that our kids are going to start using?
Well, this is kind of a complicated piece, because on the esports piece, there's really a couple different levels to that. There's a curriculum side of it. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if Jason's here, but I've been working with Jason Cooper on that. So I think that in the program of study, it's I'm trying to think of the term. Do you remember, Dr. Rapp? Emerging technology or something like that. But the idea is to incorporate some of the esports curriculum into that. And it's not about the gaming. It's really about, when you think about like sports business, it's the same concepts with esports. There is a business side of it, and how do you run it, and what are all the elements. So there's certainly a curriculum side of it, but then there's also, as we've discussed, like a club side of it. Mm-hmm. And the club side of it is how do you get kids engaged? They might not be athletes, or they might not be in band or fine arts, but it might be something that gets them motivated to come to school. So what we're looking at is how can we actually set up some sort of kind of grassroots, club structure around that. Mr. Plunkett and I, Dr. Rapp, Dr. Rogers, Jason, we've met. So I think we're trying to get a feel for what that looks like, but we're planning on putting some actionable items in the plan around that.
How about AI, machine learning, anything else like that we can start introducing those?
Some of that is probably incorporated into the courses at the Career Center, but as far as how we would use it with, I was thinking about this more on looking at student performance, and if a student's, kind of like with the dashboard, and I would say some of that in some regard when you're looking at data and saying, okay, what are early warning pieces in place to say that a kid needs an intervention? I think that's where you're going to see that type of technology be more and more prevalent in some of the tools we're using.
There's no doubt that it does need to be part of the study of the expansion for Tech East, and of course Ms. Gall's back there listening too. I really think we were ahead of our time on the cybersecurity piece being part of the Tech West expansion, because that was very much an emerging occupation when you all committed the resources to say, yes, we think that that's a good idea. And of course, that's going to be still one of the hottest occupations there is. So I say all that to say there does need to be collaboration about these things as you look at what could we do with Tech East. And I wanted on the record, I watched Drone Racing League this weekend.
That's crazy.
Where people sit in chairs and race drones. I didn't even know that was a thing, but I'm just saying that's about the smartest thing I can add to that esports conference.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Dr. Bonner.
Dr. Rapp, thinking about you watching Drone Racing League, it makes one of the comments I'm going to make in a moment not quite so odd. No offense. Since Ms. Cox brought up bond, I'm going to ramble a little bit, and I apologize, but, you know, I think technology is one of the key areas that moving forward we are going to address, right? And so in my mind, I appreciated hearing you say that you're going to look at numbers and right-sizing that, right? And so I think I'd like to see a lot of quantifiable data on that, right? And I may be getting ahead of the plan even, I don't know, Brian, but, you know, per capita cost for kids and staff and departments on inflation-based dollars, you know, that kind of thing, so that we can take to the community a justifiable ask, right? Because I agree with everything Angie said as far as this is mission critical in a technology cyber age. So that's a thought, and I agree with Ms. Hassett about making sure that there's equity across the district, and I think Christy and I are on the same page, being concerned with equity among socioeconomic group, you know, and I know we all are, but I agree with Christy on that. The digital citizenship piece for students and staff, right, together, and appreciate your thoughts on integrating that content. I think that's exactly the right approach. I guess the last thing I'd like to add, or two last things, we've got to continue to pursue and push the legislature on virtual school, not as a replacement, but as an additional opportunity for kids and an opportunity for the district. And then lastly, on another board I'm on, recently read an article about 12 disruptors to technology by Kerry Newhoff. And what he mentioned in the last item was Web 3.0, and that's that metaverse piece you're getting to. And, you know, with the concerns we have expressed in this very room sometimes, I think we're going to have to be very diligent in how we present that to communities and how we present that to parents, because I can envision a world where here in a very few short years, and Mr. Colbeck, you tell me if I'm wrong, I might be, we are learning as avatars in a virtual space, and that's going to scare the bejesus out of some people. So we've got to be very diligent in how we approach that, and very understanding and very sympathetic how we approach that, because I think it's coming, and I think it's a great opportunity, but we just need to be very cognizant of how we do that. So thank you. Thanks.
I appreciate the presentation, and I think the one thing that I see that's missing is parental involvement, especially in the digital citizen portion, because I think if you can educate parents on digital citizenship, I think that works in the home, and then you've got if you will, a two-pronged approach. We've got our approach at school, and we have an approach at home, because most of it happens off campus at home. So I think that is the part that I didn't see a lot of in the plan. The other thing I want the plan online. I went to go look at our technology plan, and you can't find it on our website. You can't find it under technology. What's our technology plan? And you can find it at other ISDs, and I think that is something I would like to see for this plan. I'd like to see it online. I would like to see it aligned with our cornerstones. I would like to see it aligned with and I pulled it up, you know, kind of with what you have for our board goals this year. One of the things that, you know, we had under student learning was implement a new, expand existing targeted elementary and secondary learning intervention programs based on student need. That's exactly what you described, you know, in the thing. So I think aligning it with those to show that, if you will, it's not just a plan. It's a plan with a purpose, and how it aligns with the goals that the board sets and how it aligns with our cornerstones. I like that we started doing that. We don't just say, here's the goal, there's a reason for this goal, this is how this goal exists, this is how this goal is going to be implemented, et cetera, and how this goal is reviewed. right? I think that's a really important part of the plan. I agree with everything that my colleagues have said. I think that training on the technology is really important to me, and I want a high standard on that. Because here's the problem that we have, and we have it every time we roll something new out. And I know that it happens, but let me tell you, it's more frustrating on the parental end. We have some teachers that embrace it and they run with it, and we have some that do the bare minimum. And I guarantee you, every parent has one of each. And so they don't know what the standard is when it comes to their kid and Canvas and all of that other stuff. So they don't know what the standard is. They don't know if they have a really overachieving teacher or if they have a teacher that they need to have a conversation with. So I think some of that needs to be easily discoverable, if you will. And we, Dr. Bonner alluded to, we have the best professional learning team, I think, bar none. That needs to be the standard. I think we learned, through COVID, that you could roll something out and you could expect a pretty high standard when it came to Canvas for elementary. We were going to slowly roll that out, and instead we opened it and said, you're doing it. And you know what? It worked out okay. And I think we need to not be afraid of doing some of that. To Dr. Bonner's point, I think we need to have technology on our legislative agenda. I think there needs to be a legislative piece, especially as far as funding goes for virtual. I don't think it would be out of place to mention advocacy to the TAC because that's part of it. I can't do a 1 to X if I can't fund it. And if I can't fund it, I can't have equity. I can't do a lot of other things. So I think it all works together. I think above all, I am so proud of our technology department and how we work at integrating it in the classroom. I will say that I do think learning Word and Excel are really valuable workplace skills. We talk about, being future ready. I mean, I was kind of proud I had to teach my daughter Word because she didn't know how to use it because she had only used Apple products with the district. So I do think some learning some other kinds of technology, I do think that would be helpful when we're looking at it from that curriculum point of view. Is that too much for you, Mr. Bolbeck?
No, that's good. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, I'm going to make sure he's got all your notes taken, though, before I go. And a lot of my colleagues have already addressed the things that I have made note of. I was interested, you chose the TEA technology plan, and you mentioned that there were others. Are there pieces of other plans that are not part of the TEA that you found that maybe, I wish we had the TEA plus that? Or even beyond that, could you send a list of other plans to the board members? Because I would like to see the different plans that are there and see, just as a comparison, how they line up to what TEA does is doing in that. And so moving on from that, because that's just the plan. Thank you for the presentation, and thank you for breaking it up so that it's easier for us to digest as board members. I do appreciate that, and because I'm probably, I think I'm senior in age on the board. I am. And so, I still used a typewriter for my bachelor's degree graduation paper. And so that, Ms. Prosnick used a computer for note. But seeing how this has changed and having kids within the district when this emerged, and I will tell you, having a student in middle school at the rollout and seeing how that impacted his life. He wasn't an athlete. He tried fine arts, and that wasn't his gift. But now, seeing how that technology impacted him, and I thought, it won't impact my other science child as much, but it does. Every bit of data, every bit of research. So it's not just that child that's going to go on and, as my son is, writing software in the financial district in New York. It's also going to be for that kid that's doing research on water or whatever, I mean, and so it impacts. And so I really would like to see, knowing that this is important to the district, that we start making note of how this impacts. And part of mine was, can we align this with our cornerstones? Because everything we do, every decision we make, we've made that a priority on this board, that we're going to align that with our cornerstones. And especially when that student experience comes into play, and that resource stewardship comes into play. And one thing that I've been very evident about in the last couple of years is, are we doing enough as a district beyond graduation for our kids? And so are we making sure that what we're doing now impacts what they do beyond? For my kids, it has, but has it for every child? Has it for Ms. Prosnick's and mine and Ms. Cox's and Ms. Hassett and Mr. Miller and Ms. Sons, are mentored children who maybe are not in the same socioeconomic class as our children? Are they making the impact? And so are we making those plans as we go into this? And I'm not going to call it a learning gap. I'm going to call it unlearned information that our kids have not learned during COVID. As we look into the summer, are we already going to roll out those buses with Wi-Fi? Do we already have those strategies in the works, in the talks, as when we talk about, are we going to send kids to SOAR? Are we going to do any kind of summer school that we're not calling SOAR, or summer learning? Are we already doing that sort of stuff? And so that equity piece is huge to me, because when you are with a child for the years that many of us have been with our kids, and Dr. Rogers also, they become yours. And I don't know any way to put it other than that. And when that child isn't getting the same opportunities as my child because they don't have internet accessible household, it hurts. It hurts to sit here and say that not every child in our district has that. So I want that to be a huge push in that equity piece. That digital citizenship, I don't know a single human being who could not benefit from digital citizenship. Mm-hmm. We have gotten to a society where, do we really care? Do we really care how words on paper or words on a computer make another feel? Do we care what our kids are being able to go through wormholes down and find? Because I'll tell you, I have yet to meet a parent who complains to me about what their child is accessing on a school device that doesn't provide their child with one of these. And you know what? I don't have any control over this. And neither do you. And so that digital citizenship piece, I think that the smartest people that I have learned more from are our kids. And I'm not sure that many of our digital citizenship curriculum pieces are written with student impact or input. But for those pieces that impact our students, I certainly wish there was. And I don't know how to make that happen. But I think we can learn a lot. And I think that my colleagues have covered most everything else. So okay. I thank you. I just thank you for this. Thank you for making it into a digestible piece that I can go home And I did have one more thing that was another can we, and I didn't write it down. That's all I put. So I'm like Ms. Hassett, I'll probably think of it when I lay down to go to bed tonight, and I'll email tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sells. Thank you, Board. Brian, thank you. Mr. Patterson, thank you for getting involved with the approach. I've got a couple thoughts here and questions. I don't think anything's going to be a surprise. But like Ms. Cox, I'm going to go to the TAC. I mean, I look at the TAC with 47 members. That's a committee that's not built for performance. It's built for building ambassadors that can go back to the community. So I would ask that you guys consider a complete revamp of that committee. Take the DOI as a model, get a board representative, board member representative from each of us. It's not even clear when they've turned over. Like, you know, what it was in 2016 when we had a board technology committee and I participated in the phone system thing. I think it's a different group of people. It was a smaller group, and it's different. It's just big. And it's unclear in that, and maybe you could apply this across other committees, that there's a devil's advocate in the room. Chip and Dan Heath, which we read, switched, and made to stick back in the day of Shannon Burke and Phil Schlechte. They've got a book, Decisive, and they talk a lot about having a devil's advocate at the table on some of these things. And I think, I'm looking at Brian, but I think Dr. Rapp and others, this is bigger than technology. I don't know how we do this in 4 months. It's big. Because we've talked a lot about the student side, but there's some back office systems that have to be considered here. And those are pretty significant work efforts in and of themselves. And so what I would recommend, I think you all need to hire a consultant. We can't go this alone. Organizations our size that collect $750 million in revenue and spend most of it, have 6,500 employees and $2 billion in assets, they hire an outside firm that's built these plans and then had to operationalize them. And I think we need to get somebody in the boat with us from that perspective, where they have not only designed but implemented outcomes and been responsible for those outcomes. Outsiders that can bring a new perspective to what we're talking about. Just a thought for consideration. So the TAC and the hire a consultant. I did get a chuckle out of esports. I think, you know, here's what I would say on esports. I think the concept of esports is colleges are recruiting people to play Division 1, 2, and 3 esports, right?
They are. Mm-hmm.
So sit at home on your couch, learn to play these games, and go get a scholarship at a D1, 2, or 3 school. That's the reality of it. I mean, I've got friends who their kids do that. And so, you know, it's not clear to me how we fit into that. Is this a technology issue? Or is it an instruction and learning issue? Is it a curriculum issue? And I think when we put that on the table, we can go into a lot of different directions just around esports. So just thought for consideration. Back in 2016, when we had IBM come in with Watson, I think those of us that were in those meetings felt like, especially with the facial recognition, we had some concerns. But just the concepts that they were talking about, AI and ML, hadn't really matured then. The concept of code halos, so think about Waze as an app, is code halos. There's a lot going on around you, and it's following you and informing you. I think that market has matured sufficiently where we can start to take some positions. Not necessarily in facial recognition, but the things you talked about, using it to ascertain or aggregate and then create actions or actionable insights from that data. I think we're there, and the plan should incorporate that. That right there is more than 4 months of assessment to look at how do we use AI and ML to transform. Just think about what we're seeing today with the labor shortages. They're talking about robots mixing your drinks because of the labor shortage. Labor shortages drive these. It's what cognizant scientists wrote about in 2017 when they wrote Code Halos, but also what to do when machines take over. And we're seeing it today. It's manifesting itself 5 years later after they wrote that book. A question for you on I drove by Florimond Elementary the other day, and they had a common sense banner up. I guess I know what that is now. Is that common in most of our campuses?
Yeah, it's been one of our district improvement plan goals that all of our schools earn their common sense media recognition.
But do they put a banner up?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And does the public know what that means? Beyond the mamas, I mean, people who drive by and, like, what does common sense mean, right? Do people really know what that is?
I mean, you
I
know,
don't know. I mean,
it depends on your
first time I saw
level
it.
of engagement with the school on many things, right? So if your idea ask is addressing something that helps parents better understand the recognition and the work we've put into when it comes to digital citizenship, that I totally understand and we can continue to do.
Okay. A couple other thoughts. Haven't heard PBL in a long time, but and it, you know, I might ask Dr. Rapp to opine on graduation portfolios. Just kidding. Just kidding. But I think, and I saw 1-to-1 versus 1-to-X. I think that's all of a sudden, are we transitioning from 1-to-X or are we 1-to-1?
Well, currently, I mean, we're running the 1-to-X program where the device goes home in grades 4 through 12. Currently, pre-K through 3, every student, as a result of COVID, has a device assigned to them. So I think that's part of one of the big things we need to tackle is what is that, what standard do we want?
I think that's a great point. Is there something compelling us to reconsider that standard, which the board was involved in deciding to not give pre-K through 3 1-to-1 devices, right? So I think it makes sense to reconsider. Everything should be on the table. But with what merits, right? Like, is there a problem with the current program, right? I think as you guys look at this technology plan, we reconsider, are we driving better instructional outcomes than the districts that don't have this expensive plan? Our greatest fear in all of this has been, is it sustainable? Can we continue to replace them? It's not clear with the current projection of funding, and I'm including multiple funding sources in that we can sustain it. We're one election away in a bond election from not being able to sustain it. So that means that we have to consider multiple options. One is to go out and we take some money from M&O. The other is we modify our strategy. It's the most expensive strategy out there. So again, just thought for consideration as the TAC tackles this, how we're going to, should we be continue to go down this path? And then the conversation of equitable access has been, brought up again. Our strategy always has been, right, wrong, or indifferent, access, not equity. And the lack of the ability for a device to access our systems creates equity issues, that's been discussed many times. I would offer that we've talked about access as it relates to device access outside of the schoolhouse. We've talked about that since 2014, so I think we're at a point where we can, whatever recommendations the TAC and you give us and other stakeholders, that we operationalize that. So in other words, we don't just have plans to say we're going to buy, 3,000 devices and we're going to buy the supporting infrastructure and replace the MacBooks for the teachers, that's everything. But we go beyond that and say we are going to have 98% access for all of our students in LISD through these community partnerships, through relationships with broadband companies that offer Wi-Fi, through 5G, which is going to be at the point at which we operationalize some of this, it will be sufficient as to be a broadband extension and have high performance, right? So I think this is the time to put in place timelines to actually operationalize these. And so in other words, we're going to have a partnership with whoever to provide 98% access or whatever you guys recommend. And I think this has to, digital transformation has to take into consideration all channels. And so I would suggest that the primary way that we communicate with I'm not suggesting this, we use Skyward we use Facebook, we use, other things, and we use our website. Our website transformation has to be considered in this strategic plan. I mean, why, if we're going to spend all this money, let's be a one-click entity, right? What's the persona of people coming into our website? They're looking for outages, snow, what's the status of snow? One click, boom. We know everybody's looking for that. Whatever it is of the communication to when you talk about crowdsourcing, what did we do in October 2021 for crowdsourcing? Like what are we doing with that information?
Well, what I was referencing there would be crowdsourcing activities that we've done with the TAC. So we've basically broken down the different areas, the goal areas, using the TA planning framework, and had discussions. We had some leading questions around, what are we doing well? What do we need to improve on? What are some areas that we're not currently doing that we need to consider doing? And there might have been a couple other questions. But we went through one group, let's say in the area of digital citizenship, discussed it. When they got done, next group looked at that group's feedback, and they kind of broke it down, added to it, and we went through 3 or 4 different rotations through crowdsourcing activities with the tech.
Okay. So we haven't incorporated crowdsourcing in anything at this point?
Not
right?
beyond that group.
Do we do social media scanning or anything like that? Like, hey, we know the latest buzz is such and such. Somebody, we've got something mining those Facebook or Twitter and
not
looking
for.
No. Okay. Would they be considering that, the TAC?
Yeah, I mean it's. I think you'll see it in. We have a draft objective looking around really communication platforms end to end, because we have a lot of them. You referenced the website, school messenger. Really, Canvas is one, Skyward is one from a messaging perspective, and we still have people using different communication platforms, if it's Remind, Class Dojo. So that is something that is going to be an action item in there where we evaluate the whole space and try to, I'd like to see us kind of consolidate, to be honest with you.
Yeah. One of the things that the board has had an opportunity to get input on what we are and what we could be in the last couple months. I'm going to use LISD in your pocket, right? LISD to me is a certain thing, to a parent is another thing, to a staff member is another thing. I think a lot of this comes together with that. Now, let me just transition and I'll close with back office. We have to have the things that we've talked about in some of our audits around the back office systems, Munis, et cetera. And again, I would encourage the administration and the TAC to hire an outside consultant to assess those things. Outsource it. Let somebody do an assessment, and you guys focus on the key initiatives. And then I would say 2 things in closing. One, we've dreamed big as a district for a long time. At the peril of access, equitable access, let's say. We provided a lot of capabilities to a majority of our students, but missed out on what we fundamentally wanted to do in closing the achievement gap, which is not just focus on the top 20%, focus on the bottom 20%, and then as well as closing the gap with the magic middle. I think that some of our dreaming has kept us from implementing. AI and ML is a perfect example, right? There are businesses selling AI and ML solutions for public ed that it might be mature enough for us to consider. So just food for thought. And then the last thing I'll say, stories. Just like with DOI, give us some stories about how these things are working, why we believe that our strategy drives better instructional outcomes, because we know it's a more expensive strategy, and this is not on our technology people because most of you weren't here when those decisions were made. But sometimes I feel like we're trying to keep something going that we just keep running and everybody looks and goes, not sure we can keep it going. Maybe we can. I think that has to be explored in this. With that, thank you for the new approach. I think there's a lot of work here. I don't know how we get to a point where we can all be comfortable to make decisions to spend money in June. I would offer again to reiterate, I think hiring somebody from the outside for a couple of these things would be helpful. and I'd be willing to entertain that on the agenda.
Okay, Brian, thank you. Board, that very beneficial. Thank you for the time that you spent preparing those, and we'll take this, Brian, and go back and you'll see a lot of it again when the next phase of the technology report comes around. Appreciate it, Brian, very much, and your staff.
Last item, Mr. Youngs.
Mr. Miller, this action item will be presented by Craig Martin, and it's talking about our internal auditors that we approved, and this is a renewal of that agreement with these internal audit firms that have helped us in the past.
Good evening, President Miller, Board of Trustees, Mr. Patterson. Thank you all. This item is, as Mr. Young's alluded to, a renewal for the internal audit committee that the board selected 2 years ago, a little over 2 years ago. And this is a renewal. The board audit committee met on January 26th and is recommending a renewal to the board. This is, again, just a renewal. This doesn't stipulate any type of areas that the board would select for audit yet or any expenses. It's just a timeline.
Ms. Hassett, do you guys want to comment?
No major comments. Mr. Martin said it. We are recommending the renewal of these three firms. We've worked directly with Gibson and McConnell already, and we're anticipating a good audit from Pope. And with that, we are confident in trying to renew all three of these for another year.
So, board, because this is an action item, this is simply allows us to go out to bid to these companies. This is very similar to us picking CMRs or architects. We have a pool that we have downsized it to, and this is who we're going to out to bid with.
I'll just add that when we decide, the committee will then look at the needs assessment soon to see if there's another area that we want to recommend to the board to do an internal audit on. We will then present that to the board, our recommendations. The board will have a chance to vote on the actual audit. So this is just like the CMR, and do we want to go with these particular vendors for the next year?
Okay. Do I have a motion?
I'll make it.
Ms. Hassett.
I move that the board approve the renewal of RFP 2622-19, internal audit and other related services, contract for 1 year with the internal audit providers Gibson Consulting Group, Inc., McConnell Jones LLP, and Pope Audit Group LLC as recommended by administration.
Second. Ms. Prosnick. Any discussion? We're not committing to any spend in this right now. Okay, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? If there's no further business, this meeting is adjourned at 8:23 p.m.